Let's now go to Carol Massar, who's standing by with Cathie Wood, the CIO, CEO, and co-founder of ARK Invest.
We just got the call. I got the message maybe 30 seconds ago. So yes. I am very happy to share this with all of you guys. Let's go. It's starting.
Congratulations. Off and running. All right. So Cathie, what do you think about in this moment of time? As we said, this has been long in coming.
Yes. Well, you described two ways this could happen. It can happen very quickly, or will it happen very slowly? When you're talking about institutions that have been very fearful of this space because of Gary Gensler and all of the drama, I think they're going to tread lightly. I don't know if you saw, but Gary Gensler put out a piece today, right as we're about to go effective, and I'm sure we all went effective roughly around the same time. And he just denigrated the whole crypto space. I was just like, I couldn't believe it. So anyway, it's with that kind of trepidation that institutions are going to have to, work through and do all of their due diligence. However, I do think that a lot of investors have considered, have been curious, and you'll see we've been from a marketing campaign, we've been using this tagline, "Aren't you a bit curious?" There are so many people who are curious out there. Of course, a lot of our existing clients know all about Bitcoin because we have owned it since 2015. But there are a lot of people who really have a hunger to know, and we can see that as more and more people read our research, tune into our Bitcoin brainstorm that we do with Rod and Bitcoin Park in Nashville, Tennessee, read our Bitcoin monthlies, and read all we have to say about crypto in blogs and in our brainstorm summary. So, we are getting all the curiosity. I think that's why we started. So we know a lot of people are waiting, and believe it or not, Carol, the curious extend to state pension funds and state treasurers we're talking to. So it's a really broad swath of people.
And I do wonder what you think success will be out of the gate in terms of investment flows. What's your hope, what's your goal or estimate in terms of bringing investors into the fund?
Well, it's very interesting. I was speaking to Eric Balchunas, your colleague, and according to his estimates, there's $4 billion waiting, in the wings. And I said to him, well, from your lips to God's ears, that would be amazing. And, we hope we get our fair share of it. I mean, we've certainly done a lot to educate the community. And we experience a lot of gratitude for that too, from the innovation communities, including the Bitcoin community, but also from the financial community, those who really are trying to find the next big idea. And this
Cathie,
is
can I ask you,
because
you mentioned SEC Chair Gary Gensler at the top, and as the headlines crossed the Bloomberg that the SEC approved all of those proposals for the spot Bitcoin ETFs, yours included, along with everyone else, the 11. He also said investors should be cautious on crypto. He said SEC's action doesn't imply approval of crypto exchanges. And if you look at all the SEC filings, yours included, there's a long list of concerns that this is still kind of a new concept and a new idea.
The old guard, basically throw out there all kinds of risks, and some people call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It happens every time, Carol. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing for people to really do their homework. They should do their homework. They should understand the risks. But this is par for the course in disruptive innovation. And thank you, Carol. You gave us our first interview, 2015, when we were barely off the ground. You believed in us back then. And at the time, you remember we were talking about Tesla. So much fear, uncertainty, and doubt, not even about autonomous, which is the next set of fears, but about EVs, and wouldn't traditional auto manufacturers absolutely choke them to death? This is completely new DNA. And so it's the old DNA, as the old car companies were, the old DNA, basically bashing the old new DNA. But
Right.
truth wins out. Truth
But
wins out. Better,
let
faster, cheaper, more productive. So,
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, as like yourself, all of us here in the newsroom, watching just, new things come into the market over decades. And this is certainly interesting, but we are still wondering about the real case use. I mean, that no one has really demonstrated a real life use case when it comes to Bitcoin. How do you think about it?
We think about it all the time. Our first paper, white paper, was all about, could Bitcoin serve the three roles of money: means of exchange, store of value, unit of account? Most people are thinking store of value right now. But I'm going to plug one of our Bitcoin brainstorms. If you want a mind-blowing experience, and I am lucky to be able to ask questions on these brainstorms, but we had, I think it was either our second or third brainstorm, which was about the convergence of Bitcoin and artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And we had on people who are, toiling to make all of this happen. One of them, a roast beef from the Lightning Network or Lightning Labs. And I have to tell you, what's going on in the emerging markets and the division of labor, the redefinition of labor, a little bit like what happened to the gig economy here, but
Mm-hmm.
put that on steroids. It's already starting to happen. So I would highly, highly, highly advise anyone interested in trying to figure out how the world is going to work,
Right.
listen to that Bitcoin brainstorm, because it's already starting to work in the emerging markets where they need it so desperately.
Cathie, what's the advantage of the ARK spot Bitcoin ETF over the others who also got approved today? We've been, as you know, reporting a lot about this kind of war on fees. Again, today, you guys cutting your fee. So what's the advantage of going with you versus a BlackRock or a Fidelity or some of the other players who are out there?
So at least three advantages, Carol. First, we selected our partner very carefully. 21 Shares is the largest pure play crypto ETP provider in the world, with $2.5 billion in assets. So what does that mean? That means with their 40 funds, before we launched with them, with their 40 funds launched over 5 years, they have battle tested their infrastructure over booms and busts, over crises, over halvings, over forkings. This is not normal for the ETF world. And we think the other ETF providers have a lot to learn, and I'm sure they are, and they will, as we go through, these different kinds of experiences. And they have economies of scale, believe it or not, that have enabled us to drive down our fees this way. We have more economies of scale because of the infrastructure that 21 Shares have built out. So that's the first. The second is research. Both of us give our research away for free. Our research started in 2014. We were trying to understand the technology. And then when Chris Berniske took over, we fast forwarded into understanding Bitcoin as money and then a new asset class. So we have been taking our clients, prospective clients, anyone who wants to read our research,
Mm-hmm.
this journey with us through deep, deep research. And it's getting deeper under Yassine's leadership. So that's the second. And then the third, and this one is not to be underestimated, especially when it comes to the wirehouses like the Morgan Stanleys, the Merrill Lynch, the UBS, Wells Fargo. Our sales force, our distributor, Resolute, has had our ETF specialists have had to understand Bitcoin since we struck our partnership in 2016. I had a funny story. Rebecca Burke, who's our most senior ETF specialist, joked with me the other day. She said, "Do you know, when I was coming to interview to ARK, I looked up what is Bitcoin, and we all laughed about it because now she not only understands it, she believes in it. Her conviction is high. She's able to share that message and hold clients' hands when Bitcoin goes through some of the volatility that we see it go through regularly. So I think those three, we have the infrastructure and operations, we have the research, deep research, and we've been doing it longer than anyone else. And three, we have a support team, a sales team that I don't think anyone else out there can beat, because we've been doing it together for 7 years already. And the same for 21 Shares, more on the institutional side. They have been working with their clients for 5 years.
One of the things we wondered about, Cathie, and I'm curious, I'm thinking people who are listening to this, what is the recourse if a custodian who holds the keys to Bitcoin loses them, or they're hacked? What's the investor recourse?
You know what? We have with us on this call Ophelia and Haney, who are the founders of 21 Shares. You're talking about infrastructure, operations. This is what I'm talking about. May I open up the floor to them?
Ophelia, you want to come in on that? You are a partnership, it's a partnership with you and ARK.
Absolutely.
What's your thought on that in terms of concerns that if something happens, if it is hacked, what's the investor recourse?
So people are completely right to be concerned. This is the whole point. This is not like stocks and bonds. This requires a very different level of infrastructure. And so I think the first step in this discussion is very clearly prevention. You need to build as robust of a setup as possible, and you need to battle test it. So we've been battle testing our implementations with custodians, our technical infrastructure, and the way in which we safeguard assets for 5 years. That's the entire point. You can't treat this like any other asset in the world. It's a bearer asset, and it's held in a very technical way. So one of the things that we do is we use a concept called cold storage. That means is that these assets are held offline in wallets that have never been brought into the internet. So you've never used them before, which means that the information related to the private key doesn't exist on the internet. It's sort of you can think of it as the diametric opposite of cloud storage. You essentially end up with, a private key that's been sharded. So it's been split into multiple pieces, and you need to bring multiple pieces online at the same time. Those pieces are held in vaults that are geographically distributed in order to control access to these products. And then we obviously have a really robust set of controls around that in terms of how you initiate transfers and how you actually move assets, because the most dangerous part of custody is actually very much the point at which you access it, right? Very frequently, when people say, oh, somebody took over my exchange account, the underlying wallet's not being hacked. What's actually happening is that their security and access protocols are being compromised in some way, not dissimilar from certain social media issues, which might have happened yesterday. And so it's really important how you actually secure these assets, and why you need to go with a provider that's actually has a track record of doing this and knows what they're doing through a variety of market conditions, because this is actually a very, very technical space.
Appreciate that. Ophelia Snyder, co-founder, president of 21 Shares, and of course, offering up the Bitcoin ETF with ARK Investments. Cathie, one thing I also think is concerns about the price of Bitcoin, the volatility. The last 3 full year returns were gains of 305% in 2020, up another 60% in 2021, followed by a loss of 64% in 2022. It's a market that can move around. We saw a little bit of a pop in Bitcoin. Will volatility continue to be a risk or something that investors have to be very much aware of? And I'm curious, what is your price forecast at this point, now that you've got the SEC approval for Bitcoin?
Sure. A couple of things. So the volatility, this again is natural for disruptive innovation that is really taking market share in any market. So it's normal, Carol. You've seen from our fund
Mm-hmm.
how disruptive innovation can be affected by exogenous factors that don't have anything to do with the share they're actually gaining. In fact, we know that during tough times, innovation gains more traction because it's better, cheaper, faster, more productive, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw this during the regional bank crisis. The regional banks imploded, the KRE index imploded. We saw bankruptcies, and Bitcoin shot up 40%. Why? It's a flight to safety. It is not. It will not be a victim of counterparty risk the way the banks will. So it's actually, as time goes on and we go through more and more crises, and it seems the way government spending and monetary policies go, that is not going to change. I think Bitcoin is going to prove its worth. One thing in terms of price, and then I'd like to just talk about fees because that's so controversial.
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed.
So our price target, our bull price target,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say institutional money moving in makes our bull price target more likely now, is $1.5 million in 2030. And you can see in our big ideas from last year at ARK invest, ark-invest.com, how the building blocks for that number.
Right.
Right. And institutional is one of the biggest reasons. In terms of fees, you'll notice 21, that's a very special number. First of all, those are our partners, 21
Right.
shares, but also 21 million units or 21 million Bitcoin will, that is the total number that will be printed or minted, right? It will not go past 21 million. This is called a rules-based monetary system. And so the fee, we thought that was clever. And we were going to start out with that one, but we knew what was going to happen. So we ended up there. But I want to bring back something I mentioned before. We already have the economies of scale that others do not because of our partner 21 shares. And so we've been able to negotiate down service provider fees in a way that we would not have been able to if we had done this by ourselves. And the other thing I want to emphasize is we are not looking to maximize profits with this. We are looking at Bitcoin as a public good. It is a financial superhighway, and we want to increase the access to Bitcoin. And one of the ways to do that is this low fee product. We have other actively managed strategies where we can do more on the profitability side.
Right.
That is not our objective here.
Cathie, just one last question, and that I'm glad we got that in 30 seconds just to wrap up. I mean, what does success look for you guys in a year from now with this particular product?
Well, I think we will be a part of the success of Bitcoin broadly. I think this opens a new chapter for Bitcoin, and I would like to believe we will be within the top 3 or 2 top providers of Bitcoin through this Bitcoin ETF.
All right. And just lastly, as you know, I like to squeeze in stuff. 15 seconds. Is there new cryptocurrency products, ETFs that might come out from you guys as well in the near future?
Well, we already put with 21 shares out 5 futures products. Those are active strategy. One last thing I'd like to honor all of those who have toiled to make Bitcoin happen. Through this ETF, I want to reassure the community, the Bitcoin community, that self-custody and an ETF are not mutually exclusive. We want to see this ecosystem continue to decentralize, but we want to bring billions of people into the ecosystem. Okay. And this is why 21 basis points ARKB.
Cathie, I so appreciate you including me on this platform. Cathie Wood, ARK Invest founder, CEO, CIO